So let's jump right into this. Have you ever kind of just wondered why some folks seem to attract wealth, like completely effortlessly, while others are constantly grinding, constantly hustling, and just never seem to get ahead? Today we're unpacking a genuinely mind-bending idea, and that is the premise that changing your internal beliefs, rather than your hustle or your business strategy, is what actually directly changes your external bank account. Seriously, most of the challenges we face with money are just a massive misunderstanding. We always think the solution is finding some magic pill strategy or just working way more hours. But it's actually about pinpointing the internal resistance we're holding onto and learning how to transform it. Honestly, by the end of our time together today, you might find that your brain has physically rewired itself just from grasping the concepts we're going to cover.
To really ground this, let's look at a super quick, punchy story. A little over 10 years ago, this guy realized he had some pretty massive limiting beliefs, specifically that income could only ever come from his primary business. So he decided to run a little experiment. He set an incredibly specific intention. He was going to generate exactly $60,000 in income from a completely new source by the end of the year. Now, what's so fascinating about this goal is just the sheer audacity of that number. He had absolutely zero idea how it was going to happen. No side hustle queued up, no secret investments. He just made the mental decision, set the goal, and then, and this is absolutely crucial, he just let it go.
And honestly, the way this timeline plays out is almost unbelievable. Back in March, that initial mental decision was made. By May, after a totally random chance lunch, he ends up investing his entire wife's savings, $23,000, into a brand new Facebook ad startup. But here's the kicker. The guys running this startup were an absolute chaotic disaster to manage. I mean, think less Silicon Valley prodigies and way more frat house with a corporate card. So by October, he'd had enough of the total chaos and wanted out. In November, they offered to buy out his 25% stake. And by the end of December, the contract was signed. The money transferred into his bank account was his initial $23,000 back, plus exactly $60,000 in profit. Literally the exact number he had decided on back in March from a source totally outside his main business. No way, right?
Okay, so the million-dollar question here is, how does this actually work in the real world? Like, how does a single thought in March turn into a literal $60,000 wire transfer by December? How do thoughts actually become things? Well, to understand the mechanics behind this whole manifestation process, we've got to take a step back and look at the macro view of what money truly is. Because if you're sitting there thinking money is just physical paper or, numbers on a digital screen, you're missing the absolute fundamental laws of how our reality operates. It all boils down to one fundamental truth, and that is that money is energy. Seriously, the people who originally came up with this whole system literally called it currency. Just like an electric current. It's an energetic or vibrational current. It's a waveform of energy that naturally flows and is constantly, always seeking expansion. Think about the universe itself. It's always growing, always evolving, right? Well, energy flows to you when you become a conduit for it to translate into new forms, new growth, and new joy. When you have this burning desire for how money can create real expansion in your life, that currency naturally just begins to flow right towards you.
But see, right here is where most of us get completely tripped up. We really have to look at the difference between a resistant mindset and an open one. Energy isn't going to flow to you just because you're terrified. Relationships don't flow to you just because you're lonely. And money absolutely does not flow to you just to get you out of financial scarcity. Desiring wealth purely for escaping scarcity, that creates massive, heavy resistance. On the flip side, desiring wealth for funding expansion, whether that's, buying a dream home, donating to a cause you love, taking awesome vacations, or scaling a business, that completely opens the door. As long as your motivation feels good and is driven by joy and evolution, the currency is going to flow.
So if prosperity and abundance are basically our natural baseline state, what on earth is blocking that current? Well, to figure that out, I actually want you to mentally pause for a second and just fill in the blank in this sentence. When I was growing up, money was, seriously, think about it right now. Let those old neural networks light up. What immediately drops into your head? This really simple little diagnostic trick reveals the early memories and the deeply seated childhood programming that have, quite frankly, probably been dictating your financial reality for your entire adult life.
Now, if you filled in that blank with something like money is super hard to make, or money is the root of all evil, or maybe even that it's the reason your parents always argued, you are absolutely not alone. These are incredibly common childhood money beliefs. But here's the massive secret. Absolutely none of these are objective truths. They are just childhood misunderstandings. Think about it. If you subconsciously believe that getting rich means you have to be an absent parent, maybe because your dad worked all the time,
Your brain is literally going to block wealth just so you can be a present parent. You are putting this immense resistance into your own financial system based on a script that was written when you were like 7 years old.
All right, so let's actually map out how these mental blocks totally wreck our bank accounts. It's through something called the psychocybernetic loop. It's a big word, but it's really just a giant domino effect. It starts with beliefs. If you inherently believe money is hard to make, well, that dictates your thoughts. You aren't having thoughts about making 60 grand easily, you're having thoughts about struggling. And those thoughts, they immediately create feelings: stress, anxiety, total overwhelm. Now, when you're operating from a primal state of financial panic, your actions really suffer. You miss out on obvious opportunities, you don't ask for that promotion, you avoid taking strategic risks. And the final stage, your results equal perpetual scarcity, which then perfectly loops right back around to reinforce that original core belief that money is hard to make in the first place.
See, your physical reality is just a mirror of your internal programming. Why? Because your brain is literally a flawless, goal-achieving machine. If you program it with the core belief that money is scarce, it's going to go out into the real world and relentlessly hunt down the exact evidence required to prove you right. This is why it's absolutely crucial to rewire your baseline beliefs. It's not about forcing yourself to change your outward actions first. Actually, scratch that. You have to change your inner consciousness first, so your brain naturally starts seeking out wealth instead of scarcity.
And this brings us to the ultimate, totally counterintuitive trap that keeps, the vast majority of the world stuck in financial stress. It is the desire to accumulate wealth purely to escape financial insecurity. This right here is the sticking point. If your number one motivation for wanting to be wealthy is just to avoid the pain of being broke, you are actually locking yourself into a permanent frequency of fear.
So I gotta ask you directly, are you wanting more money just so you don't have to feel financially insecure anymore? Is your drive actually rooted in this hidden, kind of desperate panic that you won't have enough in the future to be okay? We all hold on to this deep-seated fear that if we run out of resources, we're basically gonna die. It's super primal. We look back at times when things were incredibly tight, or we look ahead and we just panic. But this fear, it totally blocks the currency from flowing through to you in the form of ideas, synchronicities, and inspiration.
Now, the only way to actually break this fear is to look at the undeniable facts of your own life. I want you to just tell yourself this really simple but honestly profound phrase in your mind right now. I have always had enough. Really, look back at your history. Maybe it was super tight, maybe you didn't have the fancy car or the big screen TV, but life always provided enough for you to survive and get back on your feet. You have always been taken care of. Next, look at exactly where you are right now and tell yourself, I have enough right now. The word enough is kind of sneaky, right? But if you're sitting here, taking this all in at this exact second, you're okay. You have enough. You had enough yesterday, you had enough an hour ago, and you absolutely have enough right in this exact instant. You've got to ground your nervous system in that reality. And finally, let's complete the trifecta. I will always have enough. I've always had enough. I have enough right now, and I will always have enough. You see, the reason the fear of the future feels so physically awful in your body is simply because it's a lie. When you truly ground yourself in the truth that you will always be okay, you pull yourself entirely out of that primal fight or flight state. The fear just dissolves, and instantly you put yourself back into alignment. The currency of money can finally flow to you because you're no longer vibrating with scarcity. All right, let's bring all this together into a really simple, actionable formula. Step 1, you've got to create a burning, expansive vision for your life that actually requires money. Give currency a really good reason to flow to you, for joy, for growth. Step 2, identify those sneaky, limiting childhood beliefs that are acting as resistance in your psychocybernetic loop and make the conscious decision to transform them. And step 3, fully release that fundamental fear of not having enough by recognizing you have literally always been supported.
So, I want to leave you with one final question to really chew on today. Are you building wealth from a place of fear or for expansion? You don't need to hustle yourself into the ground, and you certainly don't need to become a completely different person. You really just need to open the door, stop the resistance, and realize that true abundance is your birthright. When you change that internal frequency, you unlock a completely new relationship with wealth. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I honestly can't wait to see what you create with this new understanding.